podcast world. How is everybody doing out there? Chad Belding back at you with another episode of This Life Ain't For Everybody. And boy, I'm humbled for this one. I'm excited for this one. It's one of those things where you never know how it's going to be when you talk to or meet the people that you grew up being fascinated with. And we have a man on here today that I personally did that through, and then I have a buddy on here that is kind of the glue that is putting this together. Today we are joined by Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top and Tim Montana, who you guys have seen all over the Traeger, all over the social media. Charlie Sheen, his video for Mostly Stone. Tim's got it going on in the songwriting world, from Montana but lives in Nashville, Tennessee. Mr. Billy, Tim, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing okay. I can probably vouch for Tim. We've been having long-distance rock and roll exchanges. That's about as close as we've been able to get, as everybody knows.
Tim, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's a different world out there right now, but we're able to conduct business via FaceTime and all that kind of stuff. So we've kept the wheels turning from quarantine. So,
yeah, I think it's about the same for everybody. And Mr. Billy, I got to tell you a couple things. I haven't fell into the Tiger King trap. I'm still stuck on the little old band from Texas, the ZZ Top documentary, and I don't know why that took so long to get out. I don't know the story behind it, but it was very well done, and I'm sure you were happy with it, right?
Oh, yeah. Netflix is kind of flipping out. We've been battling for the first place. Tiger King's been going. ZZ Top comes around, then Tiger King comes back. The good news is I think we're all just as weird, or, well, maybe.
Hey, Mr. Billy Gibbons, is it true, in your opinion, that absolutely the best barbecue known to mankind is from the state that you hail from in Texas?
I think the discussion is a good place as any to start, because whether it be sweet sauce, black sauce, white sauce, it could be ribs, pulled pork, sausages, even mutton. If there's anything more multifarious than the variety of barbecue one can consume, it's probably the number of places claiming to be the barbecue capital of the world. It's perhaps more than any other cuisine. I think barbecue is hotly debated around many parts of the country. And Tim and I have actually put together a list of some favorite locations we've hit up as we've zigzagged across the country looking for that next plate. And Tim, if you don't mind, I'll start it off with a spot that you and I recently hit during we called it the cross-country collision. Tim and I kept bumping into each other in various cities. The last being, he was flying out of Nashville. I was flying out of Palm Springs, California. We wound up in Kansas City. And as a lot of folks, if you follow barbecue, you know it's Signature Sauce, maybe Lockhart, Texas. They subscribe to a no sauce rule. They're emphasizing well-seasoned and well-cooked meat above all else. And Tim and I agree on that point. However, we did manage to tiptoe in and have some pretty good Q in Kansas City.
Kansas City, huh, Tim, Montana? Because I know that Tim had mentioned to me about a place in St. Louis, Missouri that I went, and they treated me like royalty there, called Pappy's. And Tim, I think Pappy's is some of the best barbecue I've ever eaten. But is there somewhere in Kansas City that's comparable?
Tim, I think you went to Pappy's.
Yeah, Pappy's in St. Louis. That's one of my staples. We started going through there when 2013, actually, with the beard song. And the owner has a big beard, came up, introduced himself, and they've been feeding the band ever since. They're like, pull the bus in, they'll run out food, and the ribs, I think, are second to none, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think Pappy's has just got it going on with their whole menu. But where is it? Kansas City is so famous for barbecue. I've had Arthur Bryant's. My favorite place in Kansas City is probably the Char Bar. Have you ever eaten there, Tim or Billy?
I think I have. I think Chad Ward took me there.
Yeah, it's Chad Ward's. Well, you probably went to 39 with Chad Ward. That's his place.
That's right. That's what it was.
You had the white beans.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Kansas City, Missouri now, they brag about having more than 100 barbecue joints. And again, they if you bump into a local, they're all going to tell you it's the barbecue capital of the world. And there's no doubt that Kansas City style barbecue, it's actually a technique from the early 20th century that involves slow cooking meat, and then they follow it with that kind of interesting tomato and molasses based sauce. And that remains one of the most distinctive types of barbecue around. There was another place that Tim and you were talking about, Gates Barbecue, which started in Kansas City. They got about 6 or 7 locations around the Midwest, and again, Gates is famous for their sauce, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I've heard of Gates. I think several of my friends in the Kansas City area turned me on to Gates a while back, and it is very good. Have you guys ever been to? I know you've been to Austin, but have you eaten Franklin's in Austin, Texas, Mr. Billy?
Oh yeah. In fact, we ought to wait until we cover other parts of the country. I think once we get to Texas, that's when it's going to get pretty fierce. We could go from Kansas City. We could go to the far east. Let's go all the way over to North Carolina.
Okay.
And believe it or not, there's a small town, Lexington, North Carolina. There's only about 20,000 people in town, but that's where North Carolina, the Carolinians, they really get fierce, calling Lexington the barbecue capital of North Carolina. They've got an annual barbecue festival down there, but Lexington barbecue, the locals refer to it as honey monk, which is, it's a wood cooked barbecue. And I don't know, some of these spots they've been blowing and going for, well over 50 years, but that's North Carolina. And if you were to go south down to Columbia, further south, that's another one of the top barbecue spots. And they are unique with that's where it changes. They've got that mustard-based flavor. In fact, that stretch of South Carolina, a lot of folks refer it as to the mustard belt.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and that's totally unique for that region, right, Mr. Billy? To where like you have your Kansas City, your St. Louis, your Memphis is not anything to do with mustard and barbecue, and then all of a sudden you get to South Carolina, and that's where it is.
Yeah, oh yeah. In fact, Tim was hanging out with one of our hot rod buddies, Jimmy Shine from Jimmy Shine Speed Shop over in Orange, California, and Tim, I made a note the last time you guys actually stopped through there. There was a place called Sheely's Barbecue. It's just on the outside of Lexington, and I think it's Batesburg or something. Really good.
Okay, Tim. When you started in on this deal with Traeger, was Billy one of the first guys that you contact because you guys have already have a friendship and a mutual understanding of each other's fascination and admiration for barbecue cuisine? Was it a natural discussion, or were you and Billy already barbecuing a bunch way before your Traeger days? How did that timeline go?
We were definitely barbecuing, I think, before the Traeger days, but I had, been on a Traeger grill, I want to say probably the last 3 years. And then through me posting stuff, talking to Billy about, how easy it is to make a gourmet barbecue meal, he became intrigued with the brand. And as you know, we did the Whisker Brothers Good Old Barbecue song for the Traeger folks. And man, great product, great team of people. And that's how I met Chad as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's so cool when you have a common denominator that that can put people together like that. Like I would never know you probably. I might have met you if it wasn't for barbecue. You know, we might have ran into each other in Nashville someday, but you know, to have a chance to talk to you and Billy Gibbons together. Mr. Billy, are you sold on the Traeger as a go-to with a guy that has probably cooked on a lot of different barbecue apparatuses? What do you like about the Traeger?
Well, the automation feature, which is kind of a more contemporary approach, they have figured out a motor drive wood pellet heat source. In fact, we can talk. I mean, we could talk for days of the rather remarkable way that invention came about. There's been several attempts to emulate that style, but the Traeger system is probably one of the most complete. I got turned on to it. When I were in the studio, we would take a break, and as everybody else went to a restaurant, we'd make a mad dash to the back where one of Tim's Traeger Grills was set up. And what's really cool, Tim showed me how it works. It's actually you can actually take a look at it through the iPhone. The settings can be monitored. You can actually set it into motion and not have to worry about it too much. It's the automation feature is it's remarkable. And I'll come back to that in a second, which gives me another when we'd hit the Traeger grill, we'd set it and we'd get into motion. And then Tim and I would take off back into the kitchen because we found ourselves suddenly offering up another element of surprise with another favorite endeavor, hot sauce. And between sessions, we teamed up and paired our favorite recipe ingredients and cooked up what is now known by its rather curious name, Beez and Teez Whisker Bomb pepper sauce. And Beez and Teez, that's B for Billy, Teez for Tim, and Whisker Bomb pepper sauce to be exact. And what's funny is we both had the kind of just a shoestring background in the culinary arts. We were kind of flying by the seat of our pants, making it up as we went along. And we decided to put it online. And when the online sales kicked in with such an overwhelming demand, we were putting in late hours between gigs and between sessions to bottle it up and get it out the door, which, of course, led into another interesting twist. We heard about a special habanero pepper growing up in the high desert down in Peru. And Tim and I, being longtime chili heads, we decided to venture way up into the alpine mountain growing fields to explore what the fuss was all about. And here's what gets interesting. This particular varietal of habanero pepper was thriving in the extremely hot climate, despite the high altitude down there. But the plants developed a sensationally radical heat index. Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the usual Scoville rating for the habanero ranging around like 300 Scoville units? Isn't that the normal one?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the one that we use is way up there because it survives in such a dry climate, and so it's got a more robust flavor to it.
And this is from Peru? Sorry, Mr. Billy.
We discovered this one peculiar habanero it can reach 650,000 Scoville units, which is pretty dramatic. But it enriches the mash, which allows us to use far fewer peppers, which leaves them for our blend of a few secret spices. But it makes for a real fiery flavor, which gave rise to the expression in this Whisker Bomb line. We had the really flavorful spicy version called Whisker Original, but with the introduction of this peculiar habanero, we came up with the second expression, which is "Have mercy hot." And I'll tell you, Tim and I will agree, this one will definitely get one's attention, but it still presents a flavor that ramps up the power for just about any dish. Tim and I will grab a bottle, race back to the Traeger once the chime rings, and it makes for a great preparation. And then, of course, it's back to the studio. So we like it. We know everybody will like it.
Hey, Billy, do you think that as you leave South Carolina from the mustard region and you head towards Memphis and come back west into where you are, is there a hot sauce influence in barbecue that once you start to get back into the Memphis, Texas area, is that where your guys' fascination with hot sauce comes from?
Oh, yeah. T for Texas, T for Tennessee. And there's a love for that spicy edge from both regions, probably more so than the rest of the country. Memphis has, they're actually renowned for their slow cooked pork and dry rubs. Of course, you probably heard about the famous Rendezvous in the downstairs alley off of Madison and Union. That's downtown Memphis. That is the spot.
Yep.
There's another entry. Speaking of Memphis, once you've had your fill of barbecue, you can head over to a place called Cozy Corner. Now they apply barbecuing techniques to Cornish game hens. What? that really gets interesting. But now speaking of the kind of the offshoots of barbecue as most folks would know it, our studio engineer, the late Joe Hardy, who hailed from Owensboro, Kentucky, and we thought we knew it all. And one afternoon, Tim and I were in the studio, and Joe came in, and we started talking about his background from Owensboro, Kentucky, a Western Kentucky style barbecue, and they don't use pork, they don't use beef, they don't use chicken, they use mutton, which is a barbecue made from sheep, and that's what you get around Owensboro. They tenderize it over and over, and then they serve it up with what they call their black dipping sauce. And I actually drove up with Joe. Oh gosh, this has been quite some time ago, but there was a joint called the Moonlight Barbecue Inn, and that was our experience with mutton, and it was good. It made our top 10, top 20. There's probably top 100 at this point.
Tim, in your travels, or growing up out in the Western United States in the mountain country of Montana, did you always have a taste bud for hot sauce? I mean, did you put it on your eggs? Did you put it on your pizza? Did you put it on everything that you ate like some people did, or were you more particular than that?
Well, it started actually as I used to suck my finger, this one right here, when I was like 3 or 4. And my mom tried to get me to stop doing it, so she put hot sauce on there. She started with light hot sauce, and I'd get used to it. So I'd wake up and I'm like, oh, this is really good. So then my mom would put hotter hot sauce on my finger until it got to the point where I was like addicted to hot sauce. So I remember when I was a kid, she'd be ordering it online, just stuff to try to get me to. And I stopped sucking my finger finally, but I left there with an addiction to spicy foods. And ever since then, man, it's just been hot sauce on everything. And I've just been a hot sauce junkie my whole life since 3 or 4.
So if you have that much experience in hot sauce, and Mr. Billy traveled the country in his music career and the world, how do you guys settle on these flavors of Whisker Bomb? Because we haven't even gotten into Texas barbecue yet. We've moved into Kentucky and Memphis. I want to get into Texas, but how in the heck can you guys, with all of the variations out there, and I'm asking this because this sauce right here that I'm holding up is the best. This hot sauce right here, I could eat on anything. The flavor is amazing. This flavor is amazing, but it burns me a little bit. It surprises me. How do two guys that are kind of hot sauce aficionados that have been around the world, how do you stop and say, that's the one, that's what we're going to put in the bottle?
Tim had the notion early on. Tim, maybe you want to reveal how we landed on. Well, we're juggling between what we call the original and then the Have Mercy Hot. But Tim, if you'll take it away and give a little background during that fateful session when the rainstorm kicked off the power, which left us in the kitchen, and we were going back and forth.
Yeah, we were messing with smoke infused hot sauce, and we were messing with all kinds of stuff, and finally just arrived at that these were the ones. It's just undoubted. I think the proof is in the sauce, and the flavor of it was just something that we tested out, had a lot of people try it, and just went with what we liked first, but then with what all the people we tested it on liked as well.
Yeah,
Really?
The coincidental to Have Mercy sauce, as I mentioned, we were back in Nashville, and one of these, gully wires hit, and it knocked the power out. And here, Tim and I were fussing over a potload of mash, and when the lights went out, things got dark, and we kind of got mixed up. We were looking for what to put in what bottle and what in the next. We took the raw, super hot mash, and we started filling up the bottles, not realizing that we had drifted away from what we called the original, and the Have Mercy Hot was born. When the lights came back on, we went out to the Traeger grill and pulled off the sides. We had beef, we had chicken. I think we even had some sausage on there. But man, talk about a wake-up call. Yeah, you're right. The Whisker Bomb original will please just about everybody. The Have Mercy Hot is for your real the aficionados that want to perk up and smile.
Yeah, and if you can discipline yourself just to put a dab or a dot on something, the flavor's amazing. But what's your go-to, Billy? If you open that grill lid, what's your favorite siding for the best barbecue that you personally cook? Is it a brisket? Is it pulled pork? Or what is your go-to personally?
Well, we were in Boise, Idaho together. ZZ Top was on one side of town. Tim Montana's outfit was on the other side of town, and coincidentally, we had a day off, and we decided to get together. And Traeger Grill had driven in from Salt Lake City into Boise. There was quite a bit of interest to show off what they had come up with, and we wound up going to a spot that served. They had a pork belly that's burnt in pork belly. It's just off the chart. But Tim, what was that other crazy thing that had we did some Wagyu tomahawks that day. Chad Ward came up and our friend Anella, and we did some incredible tomahawks. So we did a little reverse sear on them. Me and Billy like to show up to restaurants and bring a grill out back and cook for ourselves. It was the tomahawk. I mean, you've got a bone like a hammer handle, and you've got a slab of meat that man, I tell you, it is a tomahawk. You could knock hell, you can knock mules down with the damn thing.
Was this a Snake River Farms, Tim?
Yeah. Yep.
Their meat's on it's a pretty different level of meat when you start dealing with the Snake River Farms Wagyu, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's very, very, the marbling, it's really good.
Hey, Mr. Billy, with all of your time spent in Nashville, is there a place that you would send somebody there for would you recommend a good barbecue in Nashville, Tennessee?
Oh yeah, conveniently located down on 12th Avenue, 12th Avenue South, and we go in there quite often between sessions called Ace Barbecue. And Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that where we were introduced to? They have a white barbecue sauce, I believe, on in addition to their the more familiar red flavored looking sauce. They've got I think Edley's white sauce. Do they not?
I believe Edley's does, but I think what you're referring to is the Martins, the Alabama White at Martins. That's another good one in Nashville.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Edley's
So,
and Martins.
Edley's
Both.
and Martins. So are they a go-to? Are they a go-to there for you, or would you rather? Do you like to be at a Jeff Ruby's, or do you like to be at a Kane Prime Steakhouse in Nashville, or when you go there, is there one particular space that you search out?
Well, both Edley's and Martins. Tim had his youngsters in tow. We had a couple hours to entertain the young ones, and we walked in and we saw about 5 familiar faces. The late John Prine, who unfortunately just passed away, he was a regular in there, and that was one of our go-to spots, hoping we'd run into John Prine. Not only did we share the enjoyment of Edley's barbecue, but we enjoyed swapping stories, and we had to watch ourselves because our hour lunch break would turn into a 3-hour marathon.
Studio time's not getting taken care of. Are you, Mr. Billy, talk to me a little bit about Texas barbecue now and how it differs from the other regions we've touched on. We covered all of them pretty much, but is there a California barbecue? Is there a Western United States barbecue flavor?
Well, if we start in Texas, now we've covered the East Coast, we've gone back to the Midwest, we've even gone up as far as Kentucky. Let's come back to a place they call the Texas Barbecue Trail, which leads from Austin, Texas. You can come up south from San Antonio or come up from Austin into Lockhart, Texas. And I know that Austin has a big reputation for barbecue, just like Houston or Dallas, and a couple of joints in the capital city reign supreme, as you mentioned. And I'm glad you mentioned Franklin's. We've gotten to know them pretty well, and I must say, if you're passing through Austin and you want to go to Franklin's, get there early because they sell out by 12 o'clock noon. It's done, and you got to get in line by about 9:30. And I'd say around 11:30. One of the hired hands comes out and puts a stop to the line and says, "That's it, folks." But there's another spot in Austin called Styles Switch. They're they're way up north off Lamar. Styles Switch Barbecue. Now here's a twist. Speaking of this and the different kind of things you'll discover, we even discovered a place in San Antonio called Garcia's. And Garcia's was a Mexican stand, but they have prepared they've prepared a line of tacos with some ridiculously tender smoked brisket. I mean, hey, it is time for a jalapeno.
or some.
Getting back to it's often been named one of the top barbecue spots in the state, and some people would brag maybe best in the country. I know that the city of Lockhart calls itself the barbecue capital of Texas. There's on the same avenue, you'll find Kreitz Market or Smith's, or 2 blocks down from there is Black's. And they serve the most succulent, perfectly seasoned beef. I would say you can do no better. It's tops.
Have you when you talk about Franklin's, is it all brisket, Billy, or is there? All I know about Franklin's is his brisket. Do they have a bunch of stuff on the menu, or do people just flock in there to get a taste of that brisket?
They've got a couple of sausage. They've even got a barbecued liverwurst, and of course you can't leave out smoked chicken and smoked beef. So they cover the board. They got it all.
They got it all. And have you ever happened by chance, either one of you, eaten barbecue, Tim? Tim, you probably know this name better than I do. It's right outside of Stuttgart, Arkansas, in a little tiny community called Duval's Bluff, right by your camp, kind of, where you stay with the Purdue's. And they have a place in there. Is it called Craig's Barbecue, Tim?
Shoot, I don't think I've ever been.
You got to try it. You got to go there on your next trip to Stuttgart. Duval's Bluff, Duvall''S, Bluff. Okay. And there's a little place in there called Craig's Barbecue. You can get it to go, or you can buy the sauce. Tremendous.
Okay. Yeah, I usually do all the cooking when I'm down there in Stuttgart, or at least a couple nights I'll do barbecue for the guys. So.
And get beat in wrestling matches.
I did want to mention you brought something up that was kind of interesting. California. So if you get happy with your experience in Texas, and then you start moving west, you can go through New Mexico, go through Arizona, even travel up to Nevada, and then the west. I like to go until further. You end up at the beach, and close to the little hacienda drive from my place, two spots. One called Slab, which is located right there on 3rd, close to Farmers Market, and another one called Bledsoe's down on La Brea. And I must say, for being that far west in the outlands of the West Coast, man, both Bledsoe's and Slab will give everybody a run for their money. It's really something.
So, if you only got to go to one more out of everyone we just talked about, is it Franklin's, or is it the mustard? Is it the mustard region? Where's the last place you go to if you only got one more choice, Billy?
Well, as I mentioned, we're sitting here in Las Vegas waiting to get back to our favorite spot. But until they open up the table, we're going to stretch out and start experimenting with what might be found in Las Vegas. And that would be a real interesting leaf to turn over, because with as much traffic as they've enjoyed in the past, and hopefully in the not too distant future, I feel certain there's going to be another spot to add to our list.
In Las Vegas, huh? I like it. Are you in Las Vegas for a residency? Are you guys getting ready for a residency?
We were. I was in Spain. I went over to play with Mick Fleetwood, who had organized a special concert as a tribute to the early days of Fleetwood Mac, and particularly highlighting the great work of the founding leader. The guitar player for the early Fleetwood Mac was Peter Green, and what a night that turned out to be. It was at the London Palladium. The place was packed, and so many great performers. David Gilmour came out. Bill Wyman, the original bass player for the Rolling Stones, weighed in. Johnny Lang showed up. Kirk Hammett from Metallica came into play. He now owns Peter Green's guitar. So he showed up, and it just became a event. And since I was overseas, I decided to go over to Spain, which Gilligan and I like to go over to visit her cousin Kit, and then I've got Nacho Baños, our dear friend over in Valencia, Spain. And we were having such a good time. we were tempted to kind of hang around, but we had a booking here in Las Vegas to resume our residency at the Venetian. So we had to hop aboard the plane and leave Spain behind. And as luck would have it, we were not prepared for this. The pandemic discussion hadn't even hit the airwaves, but it turned out we lucked out and got on the last flight before the curtain dropped and shut everything down. But once we arrived back in Las Vegas, things were getting a little sticky, and at the present time, that residency has been temporarily postponed, like everything.
Like everything. Tim, what's your favorite part about a ZZ Top concert? I'm sure you've seen a ton of them, huh?
Man, I think I've seen 28 ZZ Top concerts.
Wow. That's
I'm not keeping track. I'm not counting. Man, I just, every night I'm like a student next to the stage looking at Billy, Dusty, and Frank. And I'm just like, these guys defined a big part of my childhood, and getting to work with these guys and become friends with them. And I'm constantly learning from everything from the setup and the clothes to the guitars to, they put on the big show. There's no business like show business, and ZZ Top's about the best at it. So
you kind of seen that from that big tour they put, that giant Texas tour they put together in the documentary. Mr. Billy, if you don't mind, I don't know if you'll talk on it, but what turns you on about a Tim Montana, his music, him as a person? And I know what a kind of guy he is, but how did you guys hit it off so well?
Tim impressed me early on. Our friendship started rather coincidentally. ZZ Top was traveling out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, down toward South Carolina, and we had a 2-day in Nashville. And a friend of mine called me up and invited me to weigh in with this upcoming group, Tim Montana and the Shreds. And I said, "Gee whiz, with a name like that, count me in." And I went into the studio, and we were kind of scratching our head, pencil over the perk, and Tim kept humming a song. I said, "Well, that's an interesting melody. What you got?" And he said, "Oh, it's kind of corny." We decided to 5 minutes. We had the song skeletonized, and I said, "Tim, it's up to you. Take the fellas in and make some music." So actually, I left the building for about 30 minutes, came back within the hour. They had put together a rock song, which turned out to be a rockin' big song called "This Came Here to Party," which, if you remember, the Boston Red Sox were trying to win the World Series, and it was something that had escaped for many, many years. In fact, the players all to not shave until they won the pennant. And they were looking for a theme song, and somebody stumbled onto Tim's song we had written called "This Beard Came Here to Party," which became their theme song. And lo and behold, sure enough, they won the pennant. And I credit Tim's remarkable sense of vision. He can see over the horizon for things that the coming of what's happening, and that really started us off in the right direction. We've been turning over stones ever since. Yeah, but Tim, he's following, and with this unusual turn of events, everybody's been very curious how we're going to maintain our interaction with our fans. And things have taken such a drastic turn over the recent couple of months. We have been designing some drastic ways of our own to reach our friends and fans of what we do. in addition to keeping the studio scene engaged for writing new songs and new material, getting this about ways to gather. Perhaps it might be an open air engagement, and at the same time, we're looking how to keep the settings intimate to keep the vibe alive.
Totally, I totally understand where you're coming from. And Tim, are you in the same boat right now, Tim? As I see how innovative you're getting with your new Wednesday night. Your Wednesday nights, you're getting ready to do some new things on social, right?
Yeah, we started this old boy in the garage, having guest callers call in. I'll play a few songs, but keeping your fans engaged is like different than a concert. I feel like you can't just sit there and play for 45 minutes on a guitar or 2 hours on a guitar anymore. So we switched it up with people calling in, talking about stuff. Then I'll switch and play a song. And then my wife, Danielle, will pan over to a new scene, and my wife will show you guys how to make a cocktail, and just trying to stay as interactive in this digital age, that we're kind of stuck in. So yeah, just kind of learning to adapt and roll with the punches, and hoping we get through this sooner than later and can get back on the road.
And so where does, oh, sorry, Mr. Billy, go ahead.
Well, Tim and I, we were trying to dream up what would be a new favorite gig. Tim and I have, on many separate occasions, we've enjoyed playing from arenas down to, our favorite, the little intimate club where you can really get down to it. But that new favorite is the new challenge to unravel. We were having a time. We even thought about dusting off it's been done, but we were thinking about dusting off a cross-country railroad train station stop. And what brought this to the forefront, we've got a pal who owns not only a Pullman car, but he's got a flatbed car. And the Pullman car has a folding side which can reveal, if we were to pull into the station, we could let the side fold down. We could then strike up the band and start to grind. And, if the weather holds out, we can light the fuse, crank it up, and let her rip. And of course, there's plenty of room for plenty of folks in and around the platform. Everybody could spread out, and it would make for an outdoor invitation bash for the fans to enjoy a round with a rockin' sockin', call it a screaming scorcher. And then we liked the idea of holding maybe the after bash. We'd leave the Pullman car, we'd go to the flatbed, which would be full of Traeger grills, and that would include a smoking cookout. That'd be the way to move on into the night for a blast-o-rama.
Man, I think it kind of reminds me of listening to a Jerry Jeff Walker song back in the day about the railroad, but I would think that would be a huge hit across the country.
Yeah. I had some friends that actually it's been done, which now that the road opened, the railroad lines are waiting.
Yeah. So what's next on the agenda for this stuff right here? Is Whisker Bomb going to extend their product line? Is it going to get into more marinades and more barbecue sauces, or are we going to stick with the two right now? Or is there any secrets or any maybe potential plans that are being discussed that you guys can give us some hope for?
Well, the sky's the limit. Tim, you just got the latest update from when both bottles, Whisker Bomb Original and the Whisker Bomb Have Mercy Hot, are soon to hit the shelves. I believe we're going to start off in Texas.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So we're going to be in June at select HEB stores across the state of Texas. you'll be able to purchase both of our products. And that's going to be out starting in June. You can still order online at whiskerbomb.com, but for all our Texas friends, hit up HEB in June and bring home some goodness.
Yeah, man.
Well, I don't know what to say other than I'm a big fan of both sauces. The flavor profile is amazing. I'm not just saying that because I know you, Tim. You guys have absolutely brought hot sauce, in my opinion, to a new level of flavor. I love it on a lot of different things. And I've always been a kind of guy that I like to cook for flavor and I like to get the real essence of a food. And I've never really covered a lot of good food up with hot sauce, but with this original and the Have Mercy, you keep a good flavor in your food and it's just a well thought out flavor. The recipe is awesome. So congratulations to you guys. And I hope that everybody in the country gets to experience Whisker Bomb as soon as possible.
You got it. You got it. Well, this has been pretty eye-opening. We zeroed in on a couple of our all-time favorites. We hit barbecue, we hit hot sauce, a little Mexican food thrown in, some good sounds, good tunes. I think that's a way to wrap up a good start on a great day.
Hey, Mr. Billy, I couldn't agree more. Congratulations on such an instrumental career that you've been so prolific and instrumental in people's lives, musicians. And, you know, you don't need to hear it from a kid in Nevada, but ZZ Top was a huge part of my childhood. And now I'm in my 40s and I still rock it daily. So I'm a big fan. I'm humbled to have you here. And Tim, if you can hear me, I appreciate you making the introduction, and I hope that we can do it again, and I hope to see you guys in person real soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, Chad.
It ain't what you want.
Yeah, Chad. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon.
I'd rather be poor living off in a hole, rich as hell without